Welcome to Marketing Demystified, the podcast that connects the dots for business leaders to drive revenue through effective marketing strategy. We chat with marketing experts on different topics that will help you ramp up your revenue. We stream live on LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube, and you can listen to us on your favorite podcast platforms. Marketing Demystified, the podcast, is presented to you by GrowGetter, your partner in growth marketing. And here's today's episode.
Hello, everyone. Are you ready to be inspired, informed, and empowered with actionable tips to transform your marketing game? You're in the right place. Welcome to Marketing Demystified. I'm your host, Jenn Mancusi, CEO and co-founder of GrowGetter, your growth marketing partner. Now, so many founders set up an initial CRM. If you're doing that at all, you're actually ahead of the game. But once they do that, get their team using it, assume the hard part is done. But for a lot of growing businesses, the data inside that CRM is quietly breaking down. By the time anyone notices, it's already causing real problems. I'm joined today by Jonas De Mets, co-founder of Koalify and a RevOps expert who spent years helping B2B teams get their CRM data under control. Jonas built Koalify specifically to solve one of the most common and damaging CRM problems out there, which is duplicate data. We are dealing with this as we speak. I'm sure you are too. Today, you're going to learn why CRM data decays, even when your team thinks they're doing everything right, what some of the warning signs look like, and how to start cleaning things up without losing what matters. Welcome to the show, Jonas.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to have this conversation because I'm not even joking. We're always dealing with duplicate data, and it just seems like, keeping your CRM clean is a big challenge that everyone's facing. So I'm just really excited to dig into this topic. But before we get started, could you tell us a little bit about Koalify and yourself and some of the work that you're doing?
Yeah, definitely. So first about Koalify. Koalify is an HubSpot deduplication app. So it makes it easier to find duplicates and then also to merge them under your rules. So you decide which records you're going to find, which records you're going to merge, etc. So that's about Koalify. I'm the co-founder. Started it with a good friend of mine who's an engineer. We both wanted to build out a niche product. And as I have experience within the HubSpot ecosystem, my colleague mainly with databases and engineering, we felt that HubSpot duplication is quite niche and a backend problem. So that's how we decided to build a product for HubSpot. Before doing Koalify, I used to be an internal operator at a B2B SaaS company. I was a VP of data and operations, so managing the data warehouse and operational tools like HubSpot, Planhead, who were tracking the interactions with our clients. And then after that experience internally, I consulted for some other B2B SaaS companies and ran into data quality issues a lot. So that's where my passion is, and that's what I'm focused on today with the product as well.
Amazing. It's like everybody has this problem. Everybody that I speak to that has a CRM says the data's a mess, right? And we love at GrowGetter when we are starting off our work with a client and they're starting from scratch with the CRM because we get to build something fresh. But anytime there's an existing database in place, or even worse, if there's multiple systems that are integrated together, which we see a lot, it can be messy. So I think a lot of people are going to learn a lot from how to clean that stuff up today.
Yep. It's a very common problem. The main reason is like people try to capture the reality, their relationships with their prospects, with their clients within their CRM system. But these people that you track, these companies that you track, all change over time. So it's hard to keep up with all the changes. Plus, there are a lot of users interacting with the records. So yeah, damage is easily done and records are easily out of date.
For sure. So I'm curious to understand, like from the beginning, like why the CRM data quality tends to decay over time, sometimes without people even noticing. Can you talk a little bit about where that poor data quality comes from and why it happens?
Yeah, definitely. So there are a couple of things. that happen in all databases. The first one, like you mentioned, decay already. It's really if you have people that change roles over time, companies that rebrand, all of their domains, for example, are updated, or their email addresses are updated, and your CRM has the historic record, but doesn't have the updated version. So that's just like a natural way of how the CRM data decays over time. If you look at retention rates within organizations, they can be 80%, 70%. So that way you know that 20% or 30% of those people are changing jobs a year. So that's also probably reflected in the data of your CRM. So that's definitely one part, is just like organizations and people that are changing. Next to that, you also have the operations where people are working in the CRM on a daily basis. They're importing records, adding manual records. There are form submissions that are tracked, integrations that are running. So there's data flowing in and updating or creating records from all these different sources, which also leads to errors that are just happening within the system. And if you bring all of that together, you very often end up with a mess if you're not cleaning it regularly. I was recently in another conversation with a friend of mine who's also helps with RevOps and a gardener, and he compared it to gardening, where very often you just need to clear out the weeds because they're showing up every time. And as if you don't do it and you let it continue going on for a while, it's just like a massive mess. So you need to have a process in place or a structure in place to clean out the weeds or the bad data on a continuous basis.
Yeah, I love that analogy. It's like, there are new things that are just popping up that need to be cleared away, which is a little bit of a challenge. But the longer you kind of let it go, the more of a mess it is. And as somebody who does not like to go in my garden and pull weeds, I know that if I let it go for a month, then I'm going to have a bigger job to do,
Yep.
clean that up, and it's not going to be my garden isn't going to be what I want it to be in the meantime as I keep letting these weeds grow. The thing about the, organizations changing and people changing over time, I think this is a big challenge that a lot of people have. And I'm wondering what your recommendation is for how to handle those sorts of things. This is a question I get all the time. Like, what do I do with this person who isn't at that company anymore? They've moved to a new company. There's new business with a new company, but what do I do with their record? I think there's one of the challenges people have with CRM is there's no standard best practice. There's just a lot of opinions and everybody kind of does it a little bit differently, which is fine. It's good to, have the freedom to create something custom, but then it creates that question of but what should I do? How should I handle that record? So what's typically your recommendation there?
Yeah, it's a great question, and my answer is going to start with it depends indeed on the use case, on the client. So I think it depends, and therefore you need to decide for yourself. Okay, if a person changes jobs, what's the impact on my organization for my use case? What do I want to do with it? If you have or if you have a business that relies on relationships heavily, and you have a sponsor that goes to a new organization that is a fan of your product or your service, then that's a very important trigger to reach out and follow up with that person. If you were able to do that high touch approach, like our product, for example, on the other hand, is rather low touch. So we have a pretty high volume of contacts, and given that 20 or 30% changes their role over a year, it would be hard to personally reach out via LinkedIn or via email to congratulate people with their new roles. So you might need to think of another system, maybe just an email or a task to check in after some time what the new company is that person needs to be associated to. So that's more if you want to generate business, or how do you want to act on that trigger. Next to that, you also have how do you want to track that records within your CRM system. What I generally recommend is merging the records. if you already know the new record that's created. So that's very often like a duplicate use case where you have an older email address of a contact that started a new role. Then you can identify them as a duplicate, you merge it, and you keep the association with the old company, but you mention that it's an old company or it's the previous employer of that specific contact. If you don't know yet where the contact is going to, and you don't have the new duplicate created or the new contact record for that same person, then you might like park that contact and avoid sending marketing emails, because very often your emails will bounce. Or if you reach out as a sales, you won't reach that person within that context, within the associated company. So it would be interesting to mark that like they left the job and keep them in a list or a segment to follow up and review later on if they need to be associated to a new company. So there are a lot of angles to a person changing jobs, and how do you want to act on it, and how do you want to track it in your CRM? And it depends.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely depends. And also I find that like not only are you mentioned like the organizations change, the people change, we're talking about a live example of that now, but also the functionality of the CRMs are changing constantly. So when you were talking about, keep a record associated with the old company they were at and the new company they were at, that wasn't always possible in a CRM. It is
Yep.
possible now, and there might be new functionality that's rolled out into the CRM as well. And so keeping on top of that while you're managing the data as well can create opportunities for sure, but also be a little bit challenging.
Yep. Like the functionalities are changing very often, and it's hard to keep track as an end user of what's changing and also what's relevant to you. So therefore, partnering up with like agencies or people that are focused on this and have seen how you can solve it for other organizations, even though there's like not a single fix. But at least you've experienced how, I know, 5 or 10 other organizations solved it, and then can guide clients into making the best decision for their business, so they don't have to figure it out themselves.
For sure, for sure. Now, you started to touch on this a little bit when we were talking about the duplicates or people that have left businesses, when you were saying that, don't email people that that they've left a business, because it's going to bounce and that's going to impact your domain and your deliverability ratings, which you want to keep those high. So my next question for you, and there's one example that we've already touched on, but if the data quality issues go unaddressed, what are some of the real consequences to the business that could be that you could be creating issues? And then what are some of the those early warning signs that something might be wrong and you might have to address a data problem?
Yeah, definitely. Like the most important issue or consequence of bad data quality for me is always like poor customer experience. Like the goal of a CRM is very often to track your relationships, to track your clients and your prospects, make sure that you have correct and rich data so you can tailor the messages to their needs. Like one of the worst examples, if you create or if you have duplicates in your system and one of the records is marked as a prospect still, but actually it's already a client and you just don't know because they're not merged, and you communicate to that prospect as if they were a client, that can result in a very bad customer experience for your existing clients. So that's like my number one, is it can really affect your business and your customer experience if you don't get your data in order. Next to that, it also has an impact on reporting. For example, if you have multiple records of the same contact and you want to track your lead intake or your number of prospects that you created, then if you have two of those records, those numbers will be inflated. If you have two records, they might have a different attribution, so attribution won't be correct. If you're handing over records and again you have two duplicates within the system, and your service reps or customer success managers are working or following up on those clients, but there are two different records of those clients and they don't know where the information of that client sits exactly, so they don't have the 360 view that they need to go into conversations, That also creates frustrations within your own team, that like they start distrusting the data because they can't rely that it's complete and it's accurate. So it also causes internal issues within the team. But most important for me is always like customer experience, because those people will eventually either give you money or continue giving you money, or just stop and not share the word anymore of your service or product.
Yeah, that's a great example that you shared of, somebody who's already a customer getting communications that are not meant for customers. But I think with prospects as well, like not being in the right segment in some way, whether the data is not fully up to date, or you don't have complete data. And again, the CRMs are have a lot of new functionality. There's a lot of ways to enrich the data and to make it complete. But if you're sending communications that are category based for a specific industry and someone's marked in the wrong industry, or so even early stage top of funnel communications, if you're creating smart segments and trying to create a relevant marketing experience, which I hope you are, that's step one. But ensuring that you have the right people in there and the right data is super important. And, I don't think we talk about it enough because it seems like an old problem, but I get emails all the time with the wrong name inserted in, or the wrong company, or a PS that's not relevant to me. I know this is happening in mass. I know that this is a bulk email send with an attempt at personalization. But if my data isn't correct and accurate in your CRM, then you're going to be sending me emails that say, "Hi, Stephanie," for years and years. And, maybe I'm not having a poor experience necessarily. I'm not a customer, but I'm probably not going to be. If I do respond to that email, it's not to say, "Yes, I'd love to meet with you." It's to say, "Stop sending me emails to the wrong person."
Yeah, it's like your trust immediately goes away, right? If the data is bad. And it's been a problem that has been there for a long time already, but it's not the sexiest thing to clean out the data. Like the new AI tools are all very nice and shiny, but cleaning out your data is very often not. So yeah, it's sometimes a matter of like focus and prioritizing like the underlying structure before moving on to more complex or advanced implementations of the CRM.
Yeah, for sure. Now, how can people, first of all, how common of a problem is this? I think I know the answer to that, but I want to hear from you're seeing this all day, every day. Like, how common of a problem is this duplicate data? And what are some of the ways that, if people are out there listening right now, how can people identify, what are some of the warning signs that they might have an issue with duplicate data?
Yeah, it's very common if you don't have a process in place. So if you're not aware or have a strategy implemented for deduplication, and you have a reasonable list of contacts and companies, then you definitely have a problem because you're not working it. And then when it shows up, like going back to the garden analogy, you'll have a garden with a lot of weeds, with a lot of duplicates in there. What we see very often is that clients come to us when 10%, at least 10% of our database is duplicated. And that's already really bad, because that's a 10% chance that you reach out to a contact that might be a duplicate. So people realize it very often when their teams start complaining, or when clients just mention, "Hey, like you, this is not my right name," or I'm already a client. So that's when people realize the problem. And then they start looking, or you start looking for a process. Can we solve this manually? Do we need an automation in place? Because it's very often a continuous problem. Where are they coming from? Is it from an integration? Is it because they're created manually? Is it form submission? Are we not capturing enough data to make sure that we know which record is a unique problem? Do we have a problem with imports? We're doing events. Every event creates an import list. So then trying to understand your situation, how and then come up with a strategy on how you want to tackle it. And very often it's not possible to do it manually anymore because you have often thousands of duplicates, and yeah, that will take a lot of manual time, and that's where we come in.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the biggest challenge, right? Is figuring out like that discovery, that moment when you're like, oh my gosh, there's so much bad data in here. There's so many duplicates. What do I do? We will often discover it when we're executing on marketing campaigns and we're trying to identify target account lists. This happens quite often. We're doing an account-based strategy or something like that, and we see okay, we're gonna carve off and create a segment for our top target accounts, and maybe there's 10 top target accounts, and then in the CRM there's 187 target accounts, right, that match those 10. So when we start to see that we've got a duplicate issue, right, certainly, on the contact level it's a challenge, but I think oftentimes there's a lot of company records that are duplicates, and that's almost harder to identify in some ways when you have a lot of company records with no contacts in them or things like that. It just creates a little bit of a mess and makes that work a little harder. So, the CRMs, if we talk specifically about HubSpot, HubSpot has some deduplication tools, and it can give you a list of duplicates and give you some opportunities to merge, but it is a pretty manual process. So where do you start with cleaning up that CRM when you've got more than, I guess, at what point do you need a process that's not manual? Like, is there a certain number of duplicates that you might have in your system that are just beyond your sort of manual capabilities? And then what do you do to solve that more complex problem?
Yeah, great question. So maybe first to answer the question on manual deduplication or merging, do a check how many you can do on manually. My estimations are very often about 100 merges can be done manually in most CRMs, tested in HubSpot specifically. So then you have an idea, okay, this is how many I can do an hour, 100, for example. If you have up to 1,000 duplicates in a portal of 10,000 records, for example, that's 10%. That will take you 10 hours. Might still be reasonable to do it manually, but as your portal grows bigger, then you can have up to 10,000 of duplicates or like 5,000 duplicates, and it will take you 50 hours. So then you're probably better off automating it instead of trying to resolve it manually. So make an estimation of how long it would take, how many you have, and then generally if it's below 1,000, you can probably do it manually. If it's above 1,000 records, you probably want to automate it and spend your time on more value-added tasks and on more fun tasks as well.
Yeah. So what does the sort of automated cleanup process look like? Because even that scares me a little bit. Like, will a system that's more automated get rid of data that I really care about?
Yeah, great question. That is possible. With great power comes great responsibility. Like, you need to be careful when you're doing things automatically in bulk. That's also with any workflow that you set up, any automation. In general, what we always advise is start with strict criteria. So make sure to identify your most certain duplicates first. Once you're confident and you've been able to review, okay, these are my certain duplicates, this is how they would merge. So in which record would they merge, what data would be retained when you're merging. And once you're comfortable, try a couple of merges, validate that it's working well, and then pull the trigger to do your first batches of certain duplicates, and then work your way backwards. So now you've done the certain duplicates. To give an example, it's like first name, last name, mobile phone number, and your LinkedIn URL are matching. Then you're very certain that you're the same person. And then you can broaden up those rules. You can remove a criteria. So leave out the mobile phone number. If their LinkedIn matches, then I'm still pretty certain that they're the duplicates. And then you can sometimes even rely on LinkedIn URL as the only identifier. So again, work a step backwards. And and only use a LinkedIn URL as an identifier, but validate or review which records are flagged as duplicates, because you very often come across data inconsistencies where incorrect data is imported, incorrect mobile phone numbers, incorrect LinkedIn URLs are available. So then you can also identify these and clean these up along the way. So that's how you would do a phased approach to make sure that you're not losing any crucial data, and that you stay in control of the merges that are happening in your CRM.
Yeah. So basically like batching them, like
Yeah,
not a full CRM deduplicate in one click.
yeah, yeah.
Just
It's definitely possible. You can do that. Like you can like take 2 minutes of your time to like merge like all the duplicates that you have identified instantly, and then you just have a bit of a chance that there might be some false positives that are merged, but you didn't invest a lot of time. If you invest a bit more time, then you reduce the number of false positives that are being merged to close to like 0%. You always have a couple that are inevitable almost, but yeah, it's a trade-off. Like maintaining CRM is never 100% correct. Your data will never be 100% correct, unless you maybe have 5 records in your portal. But, yeah.
yeah. It's like doing laundry. Like when you do all the laundry in the house and you fold everything and you put everything away and
Yeah.
then you get ready for bed and you've got more laundry.
Yep. Yep. And then the next day,
Day there's more dirty laundry, and I feel like your CRM data is the same. Like as soon as you clean it out, a day later you've got more, there's new stuff in there already, and new activity. I mean, what does like good CRM data hygiene look like as an ongoing habit? And then like, so you don't go 6 months after doing a cleanup. Let's say you put those 10 hours in, or you use an automated system, clean up all that stuff. You got all your clean laundry put away, and then you leave it for 6 months, and there's another mess. What are some best practices to maintain that data hygiene on an ongoing basis, or CRM data governance?
yeah. Do it more regularly. It's like the same if you would pile up your laundry for 6 months, you'll have a very big problem. If you
Mm-hmm.
do it every week or every 2 weeks, like laundry, you need to do earlier. But like for example, the gardening, then you'll stay in control. Everything will still look good enough or nice enough to work with, but it's not that everything is breaking down, that you're making a lot of errors. So try to have a process in place to do it on a more ongoing basis, instead of every 6 months. I go for every month at least, and clean out the most important issues that are affecting you in the worst way. Try to identify: is it like missing data? Is it duplicates? Is it bounces? What needs to be resolved first for your use case, and prioritize that. Have something in your calendar every month to spend some time on it, or have an automation in place that takes care of it for you automatically.
Sure. Yeah, one thing I find really useful is to set up like dynamic segments in your CRM. So lists that just automatically build over time with different criteria. Like we talked about, bounced emails. That's a great example of one. Having a segment of bounced emails carved out in your CRM for the in between those 2 weeks or that month when you're not cleaning out things, and use that as a suppression list so that even before you've done the job of cleaning up those people, as they're bouncing, as they're moving on to new businesses, or whatever reason they've left their previous role, that they're at least carved out and not impacting your day to day, because like you said, immediately things are changing. So if there's certain criteria that are a red flag, I tend to do this for like free email
Yeah.
platforms as well, right? Like not everyone, if you're just one of those businesses that only allows business emails in your CRM, great, that's easy. But if you're allowing Gmails and Yahoos and Hotmails and whatever else, keeping those carved out in a separate segment is a great way to identify. We see this all the time. People that are your ideal customer just use their personal email for whatever reason, and you might already have a record for that person in the system. So those are just a couple of examples, but those like dynamic lists that you can kind of keep off to the side and then take a look at them every week or two and see if there's cleanup to be done with them, is a great way to make sure you're not dealing with a mess for a long time.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's that will be a good approach. A list, as long as you have a process in place and it's clear and it's documented for your organization, that can definitely help.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, documenting process and making sure there's
Yep.
consistency.
Yep. I also wanted to come back to what you mentioned earlier. Like we discussed contact deduplication. That's always the easiest example because it's easy to understand what's a unique contact or what's a unique person. There are even cases where I'm personally keeping two records of the same contacts as duplicates in the portal. That's maybe another topic for later. But companies is always harder indeed because some organizations, like for example, you have Amazon or Microsoft, are considering that as one organization, but other organizations are selling into subsidiaries or local offices. And then you probably want to track the granularity or the hierarchy within those companies, and it gets more complex as well. So then you have like setting your hierarchy. When do you merge? Because they're essentially like very similar records. There will be different variations of Amazon or Microsoft. Yeah, so that's also important to take into account when you think of your data quality or data strategy.
Yeah, that's a big challenge actually, and that's one of those examples that we talked about earlier, where it depends. If you ask like a best practice for how to handle, if you are working with Amazon, how do you handle the company records for Amazon Prime and Amazon Flex and Whole Foods, right? Like, is Whole Foods a separate record from Amazon in your CRM? Probably. Are they owned by the same company? Yes. So how do you handle that? Or are you a business that operates regionally where you want to have an Amazon UK and an Amazon, France and an Amazon US and an Amazon Canada? And those are, you said the magic word just a moment ago about documenting the process, because that, once a new human gets their hands on the system, if they don't know the rules that the business has set out for handling those sort of parent-child relationships and those hierarchies, and account mapping, then that could easily just become a mess because you have different people handling it different ways. And that's a real challenge. It's another great example of something that like there isn't really like a here's the rule or here's how you should do it, because every business does it differently. There will be businesses that want one single account and maybe just a bunch of different contacts and buyers, and then others that maybe there's different owners. If you're a big organization and you have different owners for those different divisions within a big company like that, then you have to have separate records. So how do you handle those? And when you go to do it, then your deduplication, and you want to clean things out, how do you know what's a duplicate? Like there's got to be clear naming convention. I mean, again, like there's hours of work, I think, in cleaning that out, right?
Yeah, again, you can try to automate some of it because, like you mentioned, CRMs are updating. HubSpot recently released automatic associations that can be used to automatically associate with different divisions or locations with each other. And yeah, that way you don't have to do it manually, because if you would do it manually, it would take a lot of time and it's very open to human errors because you need to know the rules, the criteria. You won't be able to automate everything, but hopefully you're able to automate like 80% of it to save yourself and your team some time and have a clean data structure in place.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I mean, speaking of CRM, sort of with all of the new functionality and features, there's a lot of AI features available in certainly in HubSpot, in a lot of the other tools as well, for things like forecasting or lead scoring, automations. We talked about segmenting lists, and there's a lot of new agents in there that are going to write you personalized content. That's a whole nother conversation. But how is AI behaving in these systems when the underlying data is messy? What should people know, like before they start using these AI tools?
Yeah, great question. So the AI will think that your data is correct and assume it's correct because it's there. It won't make a distinction between incorrect and correct data. So therefore, if you implement or experiment with these things, you need to make sure that your data is clean. And like the easiest examples of how data is used is, for example, as chat agents. When it relies on the inputs that you give to then answer certain questions, you also need to make sure that the underlying input that you give to that agent is correct, right? They need to be able to get or read your documentation and make sure that the documentation is correct to answer your clients or your prospects questions when they're interacting with the agent. It's similar to like your data within your CRM system. It needs to be correct, and if it's not correct, then like your AI will give you a wrong answer if you would compare it to answering a question that they get from a chat. But instead, they're coming up with messages or segmentation or whatever based on data that is incorrect. So that will be wrong. Yeah. So therefore, data quality becomes even more important with all these AI solutions in place.
That's an interesting example too, because how often are we putting documents or files in your knowledge center that's like version 2, version 2.3, version 2.3.7, final,
Yeah.
and having all these different versions of stuff like that. I mean, that's a great example. Like we're not even talking about the CRM, like the contact and company data, but the the data that's getting served up for customer service or for support. There's duplicate files in there
Yeah.
that could be a mess.
And then the answers that the agent gives will also be wrong. So it's exactly the same with your CRM data. Your CRM data needs to be correct.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the questions that the agent or that the AI will answer will also be wrong. So yeah.
Yeah. I think the other thing too, like, we with forecasting and with reporting, we touched on reporting a little bit earlier, but didn't really dig in too much. But when I think about deal data and actual like pipeline and the ability to forecast and the ability to attribute and see what actually is working for your business, like this is not just about making sure your system is working properly or whatever. This is about actually unlocking growth for your business.
Yep.
And I hear a lot of people talk about, maybe when initially setting up a CRM or maybe when cleaning it up, say, don't worry about this segment. This segment isn't really a priority for us. So, it's okay that one's kind of messy or whatever, but having it incomplete, even we have to look at all the data for our business to know which levers to pull to unlock growth. That feels like an obvious statement, but sometimes it's not. And I'm a big believer that you have to view complete data. You have to view that all of the data for your business, all of the metrics, the growth metrics, the pipeline metrics, your customer metrics, even the ones you don't like. You still have to look at the data you don't like. It is still important to your business. And I just I think it's really like having that clean and accurate and up to date. If you put it off and say we can add the data for this segment later because we don't care about it right now, it's actually more work. It's
Yep.
less work to do it now, to do it all together at the same time than it is to try to clean it up later.
Yep. Completely agree. And like you mentioned, if you do account-based marketing, for example, it's also better, like instead of having a very large list of potential accounts that you want to target, of having a smaller list that is more correct or complete. than having those multiple tiers that you then maybe in a year are going to target. So coming back to what you said earlier, if you have that segment that is sparked somewhere in your CRM, sometimes it's better not to have it there if you're not going to target or not going to use it anyways. So sometimes it's better to have less data, but more complete data, especially if you're doing ABM, than mapping your complete potential audience or target market if you're not even going to address it or not even going to use it, and if the data is incorrect or incomplete, because that might intervene or with your general CRM health and your general CRM data, and within the agents or the AI extracting data from your database. So it's less data is sometimes better.
Yeah, that's an interesting point too. Is like, if there's segments that you want to be working with or target, then you don't necessarily need a full account map or a full list of all the contacts that you could maybe want to work with at some point, because they might move or change or shift. And so, just keeping the essential data in there is going to be helpful. But even I'm also, when people are like, well, this is a group I don't want to target, I don't want to send emails to this group of people, so we're not going to put them in the CRM. Sometimes you need them in there to make sure they don't get the emails.
Yeah,
The
that's also
exclusions
true.
are just important. Um, there's a segment, does not get this ABM email or does not get this newsletter or something, then having them in there to suppress them is just as important as having the target list. Because people sneak in with their, they fill out a form on the site or something. And if you don't already have tracked their history and the work that they've done with you in the past, they could get something, like you said before, that we think it's a prospect. And actually it's a customer in a segment that we said we didn't care about. So now they're getting prospecting emails and having a bad customer experience. And that can be a regret looking back,
Yeah, definitely. I've also come across a lot of cases where in order to exclude certain records or contacts from being targeted, that you need to include them in your CRM first, so that way you can exclude them. It's very counterintuitive, but it's very common. Another point I wanted to come back to was the fact that you mentioned like the deal data for the forecasting, for example. In my opinion, there are different levels of data accuracy, and the farther down the funnel, the more correct it should be. Like your deal data should be like nearly 100% correct, because you're working on these records. You very often had a conversation with them, so you should know who these are, when are they going to close, what's the amount, where are they coming from, etc. But if you go down earlier into the funnel, when there's still a lead or a prospect, and you just have the contact data, the data, you don't have that of a deep relationship, you don't have that much information of the record, so there is more room for error in your data. And then you have, I don't know, their phone number that's very like correct or incorrect, but you also have other data points like attribution, for example. It's very hard. It's an episode for it's a topic for an episode on its own, because you have so many touch points in attribution. But if you're very early in the funnel, it's very hard to track attribution correctly. And you need to understand that attribution, like in your leads, will never be 100% correct. It will be an estimation of how certain people find you. And then if you go down the funnel again to the end, to when it's a deal, then you should have a better understanding. Okay, so this is now my deal, but what attribution really made the difference, or what touch points really made a difference for this deal? So that way you have different levels of completeness and accuracy depending on where a prospect sits in your funnel.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great point too. I mean, this is probably why we have the CRM to begin with, is to see what's working, right?
Yep.
Which of our marketing efforts are having an impact on revenue? Which of our sales efforts are having an impact on revenue? What's, getting stuck in the funnel somewhere? What do we need to move along? And if we're not, if we don't have accurate data in there, then all of our attribution and our knowledge around that is not reliable.
Yep.
And that's not going to help us grow. And that's what we're here to do, right? We just want to grow our businesses, and having a solid foundation with a CRM is a key part of that.
Yeah, exactly. Like the goal is to grow, and in my opinion, you grow by improving your customer experience, by giving them valuable experiences, by serving them value at the right moment. And in order to do that, you need to track certain data points and use those data points effectively to give them that better experience. And that's what the CRM is trying to do. It's not just a system of records.
Absolutely. That's absolutely it. Thank you so much for joining us today. This was such a great conversation, and if anybody out there thought talking about duplicate data was going to be boring, I hope we changed your mind today. So many valuable insights about keeping your CRM data clean, and so yeah, thank you so much for joining today.
Thanks for having me, Jen. It was a lot of fun and interesting conversation.
Absolutely. Please make sure you're following Jonas on LinkedIn and go check out Koalify. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to Marketing Demystified wherever you get your podcasts, and join us next time for more conversations that help demystify the complex world of marketing. See you then.